Hello to everybody. I'm Raymond Sanner. I'm chairing this session, and I'm very happy that this session even comes about because, to my knowledge, after quite a few years being involved in the PPP discussions and presentations, I haven't seen any single session which focuses particularly on civil society and its possible PPPs. This is a bit extraordinary because if you look at the SDGs, and particularly at SDG 17, Target 17, which is all about PPPs. I read it, it's very short text. It says, encourage and promote effective public, public-private, and civil society partnerships, and build on the experience and resourcing strategies and of partnerships. So it is there. It's part of the 2030 agenda, but we haven't yet been doing much about looking at how civil society and all that could be different forms, cooperatives, social enterprises, mutuals, solidarity-based organizations. How are they potentially also being engaged in PPPs, be it either with government or with a private sector commercial company, or even also with each other? So I have the great privilege here to be able to present briefly the four speakers. We have the first speaker is Vaishali ANAGAL. She is Associate Professor at the College of Architecture in Pune in India. She got the awards of being the best teacher in architectural technology, and I think she will make a great presentation also about an Indian case of waste pickers and how they cooperate with the Pune government. I have as a second speaker Ghassan SAYAH from Beirut. He is also presenting a case, very interesting case about a medical program which is organized by the YMCA in Beirut, and it's about supplying people who suffer from chronic diseases with medication that he and his people at YMCA have organized. We have also a further presentation by Mr. Ibon, who is with the Mondragon big cooperative in the Basque country, who will also present in a very different dimension, but is still part of civil society since it's a cooperative, how Mondragon does its own PPPs in the energy sector as an example, and he will provide examples of what Mondragon has been doing. And at the final end, we have also a presentation by Nazrene MANNIE from the GAN. GAN is an organization which is based in Geneva, which focuses on apprenticeship and apprenticeship models and how to share their knowledge with governments. It's a global network organization, and how they can help in terms of skills development and apprenticeship models. And she will be the last speaker. And I'm sorry, as a reminder to all of you, we really have very limited amount of time, and I should actually stop talking. So to be sure that all of you have the 8 minutes that we agreed, and if you go beyond 8 minutes, I'm trying then to intervene, and I look at my Swiss watch to make sure you stay on time. So without now further ado, I hand it over to you, Vaishali.
Thank you, Raymond, for the great introduction and opening the session. May I have my slides on the screen, please? So within a limited time, I'm going to present one case study regarding the role of civil societies, especially cooperative societies, in urban solid waste management. I'm going to present a case study of my own city. So I come from a city of Pune, which is a growing metropolis in India. Can I have next slide, please? So give all of you a little background of my city. It's a very important city in India, and the daily waste generation in the city is around 1400 metric tons, out of which 40% comes from the household waste. And initially, it used to be dumped in the landfill sites within the city limits. And after these landfill sites got exhausted, Pune Municipal Corporation identified sites outside the city limit in the nearing villages. But there used to be recurring fire hazards, and there was a lot of land and groundwater pollution which these villagers suffers. And ultimately, they made a lot of protests, and they resisted the city government to dump their waste into these landfill sites. So it was kind of villagers versus urban people kind of a scenario. And like any other local self-government in India, Pune Municipal Corporation also had a very limited financial and human resources to manage the huge amount of urban solid waste that were generated in the city. Next, please. I have to give you a little background of the civil society or cooperative society that I'm going to talk about. So before actually 1990s, the entire liability of collection of the waste, segregation, disposal and recycling was a responsibility of local self-government. And there was informal society who used to do this job of waste picking, or we used to call them rat pickers, and they actually get into these steel waste bins and used to pick up the waste which was recyclable, and they used to sell it for their daily bread and butter. In 1995, these waste pickers came together to recognize their status as environmental protectionists, and they formed a union of waste pickers, which was named as KKPKP, a short form in the local language. In 2005, Pune Municipal Corporation actually ran a pilot project where these union came together, and they ran a pilot project where the door-to-door waste collection was done by waste pickers, and they collected money from the users. So it was kind of a successful pilot project, and in 2007, a cooperative society was formed by these waste pickers, which was named as Swachh. In local language, it meant clean. And there was a 5 years contract which is still running, 5 years contract between the cooperative society and Pune Municipal Corporation, where this waste management was sorted out. Now, if we look at the administrative model of this particular PPP, it's a hierarchical model, and city is divided into wards and then at very small pockets, and each level there are representatives from Swachh, which is cooperative society, and representatives of local self-government, which work in tandem with each other. Can we have next slide, please? Next, please. If we look at the operational model, which is very clear and transparent, and role of each of the partners are very clear. So the waste management can be looked in two stages: primary collection and segregation, and secondary collection and processing. So primary collection and segregation is entrusted to Swachh, a cooperative society, and secondary collection and processing is entrusted to Pune Municipal Corporation. So door-to-door collection is done by waste pickers. Then it is segregated into waste and dry waste and wet waste, which is segregated at source, that is segregated by the users themselves. Wet waste goes to the composting, and dry waste goes to further segregation into glass, plastic, metal, and so on. And then the waste which is not biodegradable, nor it is recyclable, goes to the landfill sites, which are managed by Pune Municipal Corporation. The entire transportation activity is carried out by Pune Municipal Corporation. Next, please. Financial model is very interesting to learn. So the earlier West Peaking Pune Municipal Corporation has to pay for West Peaking for door-to-door collection, and they used to employ these West Peakers. Now the West Peaking is done by West Peakers, and each of the West Peaker is allotted around 150 to 200 properties, and users directly pay to the West Peakers. So in that sense, the speakers have become entrepreneurs and they have their own entrepreneurship. And they segregate this recyclable waste and it is sold into the shops, scrap shops, which are run by Cooperative Society of Waste Speakers. Again, the profit which is made by selling reusable furniture items or clothing, toys, etc., is used for the welfare of waste speakers. Now, this cooperative society has some administrative and management cost, which is paid by Pune Municipal Corporation, and the transportation and processing cost is borne by PNC. So there is clear-cut financial division. So you have self-reliant waste speakers on one side, and there is a reduction of cost and liability for Pune Municipal
Sorry,
Corporation.
Vaishali, sorry for interrupting. You have one more minute.
Yeah, sure. Next, please. So there are other green initiatives which are taken up by Pune Municipal Corporation along with Swachh and private partners, recycling of polystyrene, recycling of sanitary waste, and reusing of the waste material which is disposed by local residents. Next, please. Next, please. Oh, I think there is one slide which is skipped. But if you look at the impact of this PPP, there are three benefits: environmental, social, and economical. So environmental benefit includes the reduction in CO2 emissions because less waste going into the landfilling site, and a reduction in the petrol consumption. There is paper recycling, so a lot of trees are saved. If you look at the economic model, less cost for Pune Municipal Corporation, and there is entrepreneurship which is developed for the waste speakers. And if you look at the social benefits, the informal activity which we used to be done by waste speakers, now they have got a formal activity and they have become entrepreneurs. And there are 70% women waste speakers which are self-reliant now. So it's a very successful social model of women empowerment, I would say.
Well,
So that's it. That's all from my side.
Very interesting case example. Thank you very much. I hope we have a little bit of time afterwards to add for everybody to add a bit more information. But for now, thank you very much.
Thank you, Raymond, and thank you very much to the World Association of PPPs and the conference organizers for inviting us to join to this conference. Thank you very much. So let me tell you a little bit about us, about the Mondragon Corporation. If we go next, this is the largest federation of worker-owned cooperatives in the world. Not the largest cooperative itself in terms of assets and turnover, but the largest on worker-owned cooperatives. We are a group of more than 100 cooperatives and more than 250 organizations within the Mondragon Federation, organized in four main areas on industry, finances, retail, and knowledge. We are operating all over the world in the 5 continents with more than 100 production facilities and several corporate offices in different countries that are acting as delegations of the Mondragon Corporation. And we have a clear approach into technological innovation and integration as driving forces of behind our own development, which will be one of my key points in the presentation today, with around 15 research and development centers owned by our cooperatives, and more than 460 patent families developed in the last years. So if we go next, as a federation of worker cooperatives, one of our main priorities is to grow. Cooperatives and worker cooperatives have the growth and the creation of employment as the main objective, as their main aim. We need to be competitive, we need to be sustainable, and we need to be profitable. But those are only means for our main aim, that is creating new jobs. Every year we need to have more people. Right now we are more than 80,000 people under the Mondragon Cooperative Corporation. But every year we need to be more people, and that's our main target, to create new jobs. And in order to create new jobs, we need to transform our business fabric or business models every day, every month, every year. We need to improve our competitive positioning on our competitive advantages of our businesses, reinforce people's cooperative identity and commitment, and continue to be a group with viable and sustainable businesses. That's quite clear for our cooperatives, with a view of generating value-added employment. We are not in any case in low-cost employments. We are clearly in high value-added employments every year when we are looking for new activities. And the question comes here: what's the role of the public sector in here? Because I mean, we know the businesses are not today what they were in the past. So if we go next, if we really want to grow, we really need to create sustainable cooperation with the public sector. If we go to the next slide, please. We really need to create new cooperation patterns with the public sector, as I was saying. One of our latest examples is in the energy sector, in the solar sector, where we are helping address the global agendas, the regional agendas at the European Union level, the national and regional agendas on the climate commitments through public and private partnerships, like we can see here, creating new cooperatives where we are linking consumer citizens and consumer cooperative members to energy regulators and public administrations like the Basque Environmental Energy Agency, together to improve and extend the use of solar energy facilities at regional level. And we are doing this already at national and international level. And this creates a great framework for what we call consumer cooperation and cradle-to-cradle approaches from consumers to producers, becoming consumers on the energy sector. So cooperativism is a great tool for improving this kind of approaches. And if we go next, and this could also work very well at the this next slide, at the education sector, where we are also promoting new cooperation frameworks in between cities and urban authorities and the private sector, in this case, the Mondragon Cooperative Corporation. We have here two recent cases for the city of Bilbao in Spain, and also New York City with the case with the Bronx district, and we are also extending this cooperation to Brooklyn, where we can create frameworks where private sector can really merge with the public sector on creating these win-win cooperation frameworks to provide new innovative education approaches, especially for social entrepreneurship, with these what we call innovation factories that are infrastructures where we can really try to promote social entrepreneurship in from an education point of view, to create not only new entrepreneurship mindsets with our young people, but also new opportunities for cooperatives to grow, and also for social enterprise to grow. So that's all from my side. I would be happy to answer to your questions once we finish these first presentations. Thank you very much, Raymond.
Okay, Ibon. Thank you very much. And I forgot to mention when I briefly introduced you, you've been also a teacher, and you've been writing on all these ventures that you briefly described or gave us an example. So I hope we will still have a little bit of time to further discuss and exchange. But now, without much further ado, can I maybe give the floor now to you, Nazrene, because I see Ghassan is sort of there, but I don't hear back from him. So why don't you go ahead and you do your presentation?
Thank you, Raymond, and afternoon to all of the participants. So, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Nazrene MANNIE. As Raymond has said, I'm the Executive Director of the Global Apprenticeship Network. We're based in Geneva, but today I'm about 10,000 kilometers away. I'm presenting from Johannesburg, South Africa. And if I could have my slide up, I'd be very happy to share the Global Apprenticeship Network's ethos, our approach, and we are in effect a PPP because we come out of the G20 processes. We've been set up by partners in the G20, in the B20, with the idea of driving youth employment strategies, more recently looking at a focus on the future of work and workforce development. So if my slides could be put up, I'll briefly take you through that. But I think what's become very interesting is a conversation that we've been having more recently about sustainable skills development. It's the slides right at the bottom in the purple.
Further down.
Yeah.
Where it says gun.
That's right.
That's it.
And if we can go to the next slide, thank you. So GAN, as I said, comes out of the G20 processes, but actually is business-led. And we were set up by the ILO, the International Organization of Employers, the OECD, and Business at OECD, at a time post the last global financial crisis, where there was a dramatic need to address youth unemployment. And 10 years later, we're sitting in a very similar crisis. At the same time, we have to look at the whole of the workforce, the issues around the future of work, the need to address things like the SDGs, requires a skilled and agile workforce and agile labor market. And we do our work as the GAN through driving and influencing global policy in this space. We make sure that there is a private sector perspective in work-based learning policy, in learning and development strategies, because it's very important that when we're talking about these kinds of developments, this kind of approach to learning and development, that the private sector is present, that we have demand-led training initiatives in place. It becomes crucial when we're looking at the technical role of work-based learning, the role of apprenticeships. These are very structured processes, but shouldn't just be developed solely by academics. It must have a business voice, it must have a business perspective and an understanding and appreciation of the very fluid labor market that we're dealing with. A lot of our work is around bringing together these partners, creating a safe space, a trusted interlocutor that GAN can play to bring business, government, communities into engagements. And as Raymond said in his introduction, we work across the globe, we work at country level, we work in regional partnerships, and we also then have this global influence, which creates a very unique space for us as the GAN. And the national context is critically important, because I think what we want to make sure we don't do is drive a Eurocentric solution and expect countries to adapt to that. It really is about understanding the countries we work in and devising solutions using global policy, using global good and best practice, but shaping it to the local demand, local trends, challenges, and the opportunities. And the strategic partnerships, I think that's where we underpin our work. We cannot do anything without collaborating with the like-minded partners, even parties that don't see similarly to us, but engaging with these different perspectives and agendas and being able to then influence. The next slide, please, RK. Thank you. So as GAN, as I said, we look at influencing decision makers, but really shaping these responsive solutions. It has to be tailor-made to different economic contexts and to different education policy frameworks. We work a lot about developing our own research, because we know that we must have a credible voice when we're talking to these various parties, whether from community level right up to the UN agencies. And then ensuring that our multi-sector partners drive the implementation. So it's not just advocacy. I think I lost connection there for a second, my apologies. But I was saying that we must be able to demonstrate the efficacy of the solutions we propose ourselves. Critically important is this policy environment, and we talk about an enabling policy environment, because importantly, we need to have social dialogue, we need to have funding frameworks in place, we need to have policy where stakeholders have all engaged, meaningful engagement with stakeholders, not just consultation, and they've shaped it with a perspective of forward-looking agendas and future-fit talent pipelines coming through. And critically important, this work means nothing if we cannot create opportunities for social development. TK, the last slide, please, or the next slide. Thank you. So I wanted to briefly just talk about some work that we've been doing in Argentina and Costa Rica. We've been funded by the US Department of Labor. So again, you're seeing multi-stakeholder donors and actors in this space, but very much focused on the skills for the future of work, and preparing these agile and responsive workforces, ensuring that we are able to respond to this very technology-influenced space. We know that AI is here. We understand that there will be displacement, but within this displacement, there are also significant job creation opportunities. So how do we craft these education systems that can work in this space? And then ensuring that these are lifelong systems. Sustainable skills development means that people can take their skills, they can build on top of those skills, they can grow their qualifications, and they can move through the labor market, entering, exiting, moving horizontally and vertically at different points in their life. And COVID has highlighted the need for digital learning, and the need for infrastructure to be in place. And that's hardware, software, as well as policy infrastructure that needs to be worked. And this means a proper PPP across the board. So not just public sector, not just private sector, but community partners, agencies who operate at all levels within the countries that we work in, ensuring planning, ensuring future forward-looking development strategies that cut across from basic education through to post-school. So as the GAN, we really are driving this kind of engagement, and we think that we are a pretty decent model of what a next level PPP should look like. So thank you very much, Raymond, and back to you.
Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. And let's see if Ghassan can be on board. I see, I think can you hear us, Ghassan? So what I've heard is, you know, I think we all have followed the recent history of Lebanon and the multiple crises, from economic to political, to the refugee crisis, to the unfortunate big accident at the port of Beirut, which led to so many people who died. And just the infrastructure here, particularly the social infrastructure, also has been very badly hit by these multiple crises. So the initiative, I think, is just very laudable by Ghassan and YMCA to do the necessary to bring medications to the people who need them. Next slide. And you see here a little history about it, how they started. And it's a public-private project where the government or whoever is in government has made a commitment to provide some finances in 1993. Next slide. Okay, to enlarge. And it is about as the chronic diseases and to bring the medication to the different dispensaries spread in the Beirut area. Next slide. So the present situation here, as he tries to describe, it looks like a grand city, everything is fine, but we all know that in fact the reality is very dire, very difficult. And he lists up here some of the problems they have to face: the scarce availability of medicines, empty pharmacies, the increase of 30% of needy people who are not being taken care of or cannot be taken care of because the infrastructure fell apart. And so the YMCA, as a sort of social actor in between the government and the people and the individuals, they have really been able to serve the population and to do an excellent effort to help out. Next slide. Ghassan, are you there? Ghassan?
Yeah.
Well, let me just continue. But if you can come in, Ghassan, of course, please interrupt me. So he sees here this as a good example of private-public partnership. And the idea is to continue as much as that can be continued. And it's not just, in that sense, charity, but it is providing a public service without being part of the government, but to, in that sense, act as an intermediary. And in this regard, it's just a remarkable work that they have been able to do despite all the turmoil, turbulence, and difficulties. Next slide, if there is one. So he just says, thank you. I would express the thanks to all of you. Ghassan, can you come in? No, I guess it's still unfortunately not possible. Well, it leaves us with 7 minutes. And I'm just wondering, what do you think?
Can you hear
hello?
me now, Raymond? Could you hear me now?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Ghassan, I'm sorry, but I just did an improvised presentation of your slides. So maybe you want to add some.
Since you have the slides, I would like to make some comments which are more important than what the slides shows. Reference this program. It's the largest program ever to take a partnership which brings together the government, the NGOs, and the international organization of United Nations like WHO, UNCR, along with international donor agencies.
Mm-hmm.
This program, the importance of this program is its relevance, transparency, efficiency, and its futuristic view, because somehow 25 years ago, we saw that the need in the country patients is going to rise, the more will join the poverty group, the more they will be in need for medicines to be catered to their
Ghassan, I'm sorry, we lost you again.
How about now? I
No, it's okay. But be mindful, you have just 2 minutes left.
Okay. I just wanted to stress the fact that when a program is relevant and transparent, government and international donor agencies will come in, and this program proved to be a win-win for all partners, the government, the civil society, and the patients. We are serving 220,000 chronically ill patients throughout the country. And the cost of this program at the time being actual out-of-pocket money is $10 million. But if you do the calculation for the real cost of the program, it will cost 100 million US dollars had it not been for the utilization of the human resources and the real estate owned by the NGOs around the country. It's 10 times more expensive if the government was to implement this project, where it's only costing us 10 million simply by utilizing own resources and bringing these resources together.
Okay, Ghassan, thank you very much for these additional explanations, which were very important to really appreciate all the efforts that have been made and the contribution to the Lebanese society. We're coming almost to the end. We have 5 more minutes left. And I wanted to put to all of the speakers the following question. A recent study that we did, a group of 7 people who are involved in PPPs, we looked at the history, how PPPs evolved, what it is today, and you can sort of make the distinction between the initial focus on profitability, the value for money orientation, especially for the large physical infrastructure projects. That was an important concern, and understandably, it led to a lot of risk assessment, but it had to generate, of course, a good profit. Since then, we have had the SDGs, and a new additional concern an objective has appeared, which is the PPP project should also generate value for society. And the last one is, in addition to value for society, also looking into the next generation, the value of doing something for the next generation. So the value for the next generation was added to the assessment and consideration of PPP projects. I was just wondering what you think about these 3 kinds of, let's say, criteria to look at proposals for PPP. Do they generate value for money? Do they generate value for society? And do they generate value for the next generation? Any one of you?
Well, Raymond, I think it's critically important.
May I, Raymond?
Ghassan, hold a second. Let's have Nazrene first.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Nazrene.
I was saying it's critically important because we can't have and determine a long-term investment's value if we cannot see it move through into the next generation, so application and usage in the next generation, or improvement of the society at large. And I think that the skills agenda is something that really is important as an example of what can be transferred. So, in not just hard capital or hard infrastructure, but the skills transfer is so important in terms of taking through the intent and the purpose of many of these PPPs to be effectively implemented, rolled out, and to get then that value for money that was initially invested into it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other person, any other contributions to it?
Yeah, the basic idea of value for money, if civil societies are involved, if they are involved, they will have that value for money. like the model that I presented, since users are paying for the services that are getting, they're actually getting the value for money, and there is a reduction of cost for the other partners also. So if the roles are defined for each of the partner clearly, and there is a clear financial model that is worked out between the or among all the partners, there would be definitely a value for money for each of the partners.
Okay. Ibon, how do you see it?
Well, how not? It's in our essence. I mean, Mondragon and cooperatives can prove that higher value solutions can be provided also by worker cooperatives. That of course they need to create wealth. They need to be competitive. They need to compete with other players in the market, following fair competition rules. But at the end, they show that every wealth that is created is distributed to the whole network, of worker owners, and to society as a whole in a much better way than traditional companies do. And of course, this also shows that there is a lot of room for cooperation in between social enterprise and the public sector worldwide in many sectors, from engineering to education to water management to public supplies of services and goods. And there are a lot of opportunities for these very effective ways of providing advanced solutions to the public sector.
Great, thank you. I see Ghassan has come back. I think we're about running out of time. But if Ghassan, if you can talk, why don't you come back? Is there something more that you would like to add?
Yes, I would like
Ghassan?
to add that. Yes, Ghassan. Can you hear me now?
We hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to add that such partnership between government and civil society organizations is super useful on the financial and the humanitarian level, and it pays off not only humanitarianly, but financially as well, since these organizations put together and relying on government funding, they feel the ownership which guarantees the sustainability of such projects. And there's no way that one party could carry on such a program by itself. So we have learned it the hard way that the output is financially 10 times bigger than what it could have been if one party alone was to implement such a project. So it pays off financially and for our generations to come, and on the humanitarian level in terms of saving lives of patients and needy people.
Well, thank you very much for these closing words and for the further explanations about the work you do in Lebanon and in Beirut. I would almost say you did a good closure also of our session. I hope that we stay in touch. I think there is more work to be done about PPPs with civil society and the social sector. To my knowledge, nothing has been written about it yet in the real PPP sense of the word. So let's hope that we stay in touch and be able to further cooperate, and that you also amongst yourselves can maybe establish good communications and relations. I think at this stage, I just say thank you very much and see you again. So long.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.